What's up? It's Tom. Thanks for joining me to talk some about the Twins 2026 draft class. We're only going to discuss day one right now. I'll do a separate video on day two. So, general thoughts on day one for me. They did a great job of not getting cute. I would have definitely been disappointed if they did not take one of these top three guys, and they took the one that fell to him, Vahn Lackey, a guy who some people had number one on their draft boards. So it's not like it was any kind of a slam dunk that Lackey was going to be here. This was kind of the conventional pick at number three, the conventional guy to fall to the Twins, but was not a lock. You know, Sean Johnson sort of stressed that it feels like it was an easy pick, but Sean Johnson really rejects that concept and says they're taking a chance on Lackey still, which I kind of get that. On the one hand, it was easy enough for the Twins just to take the guy that fell to them, but on the other hand, this was a breakout player of the class. Anytime you're in a position to potentially draft the best pitcher in the class, which the Twins were, that always has to be an attractive possibility. There were plenty of other players, what I'm trying to get to, that the Twins probably really, really liked beyond Vahn Lackey. So it's not like they had no choice or anything. But still, again, I was glad they didn't get cute. I was glad they didn't choose the creative route that conventional wisdom prevailed, and the Twins drafted Vahn Lackey. Twins fans clamoring for a catcher are finally satiated and then some. Which we'll talk about in a little bit. But when you're picking this high, I really feel like you want to come out of it thinking that you got a very uncommon talent, and Vahn Lackey fits that bill to a T. A catcher who is a legit catcher, who is a fantastic athlete for a catcher, a guy who had an incredible season. This is an unusual player to be playing behind the plate. They address the needs without having to reach to do so. They're always going to take the best available guys, especially picking this high. Maybe when you get later in the draft, you do focus on filling out a draft class or a system more, and maybe if you have some guys ranked similarly, you'll sort of use that as a tiebreaker. But when you're picking up higher, you're going to take the best available player. And again, a lot of people have been pointing out the catching pipeline. Obviously, that got improved by last year's trade deadline quite a bit, but kind of worked out nicely that the draft came to them, and what's been an organizational weakness happens to align with the best available player here. So, they also grabbed some pitching depth earlier than they usually have in some drafts recently, which I think that was also maybe an example of the draft coming to them a little bit. I think that was another weakness that they'll continue to address on day two. We're going to go pick by pick on these guys, but I do want to call out my favorite pick was right-handed pitcher out of high school, Ethan Wachsman. An uncommonly high upside for a third-round high school arm, but he's probably not getting third-round money. His bonus is probably going to be quite a bit higher than that slot. And then the pick I'm not really feeling is Carson Tinney, the catcher that they took in the second round. Again, we'll talk more about both those guys. You can never have too many catchers, so it's not like I don't think those guys can coexist with Eduardo Tait or anybody else in this system. You always need two catchers in the big leagues. Catchers get hurt a lot. It's a tough position to play. Your starter is never really going to take the lion's share. And if you get into the dream scenario where you have three catchers with multi-year team control, that is a huge trade chip that you have, because it is not easy to find catchers. So if somehow all of these guys develop into big league catchers, the Twins will find a way. They'll find a way to make use of that value. So, but still, Carson Tinney in the second round, it's just going to make the class very one-dimensional, is how I would put it. Having two catchers at the top of the class, we're going to look back and say, well, they really put a lot of assets, a lot of investment into catching here, and there are other players who I thought would have been better to take in the second round. Though it doesn't shock me that Carson Tinney would have been the top guy on their board at that spot. But anyway, on to Vahn Lackey. Again, conventional wisdom prevailed. Some people kind of heard talk of him playing third base and sort of got an ick face from that, thinking that meant he wasn't going to catch. He is a legit catcher. The third base stuff is more about how he has the tools to play there on his days off from catching. So don't let that distract you from the fact that Vahn Lackey is a catchery catcher, is how I would like to put it. And again, the Twins with the third pick, this was considered to be a two-player draft with Rock Chalowski and Grady Emerson having been the 1 and 2 the entire draft cycle. And there was really up in the air when the Twins got the third pick in the draft lottery. There wasn't any kind of slam dunk number 3 guy, and Vahn Lackey elevated himself to that, and much to the benefit of the Twins. Great to see him break out, but he doesn't have that long of a track record of this production. So there is that question, but a multifaceted game. Does the bat translate? He did learn to lift the ball a lot this past season. Can he endure a 5 to 6 month season of catching? These are questions that are going to have to be addressed. There's a lot of college catchers that haven't translated very well to pro ball. But again, this is an uncommonly athletic backstop. He played all 8 positions in the field. I don't think they had him pitch, but he played everywhere else in the field in a game. His college coach just wanted to sort of display the kind of baseball player he is. I think he might have hit for the cycle in that game too, or came close. Anyway, a fantastic get. This is the highest catcher the Twins have taken since Joe Mauer in 2001. This is the highest college hitter the Twins have taken since Travis Lee in 1996, and the highest they'll have signed a college bat that they've taken since David McCarty in 1991. So, yeah, when the Twins have picked really high, it's been Royce Lewis, it's been Byron Buxton, it's been these really high upside high school guys. So this is brand new. I was trying to figure out, well, who's the draft pick that Vahn Lackey reminds me of? And again, this is an uncommon talent. So I'm not saying he doesn't fit in with any other higher Twins picks, but I don't think you can make a very good case that the Twins have ever drafted a guy like this, at least in my lifetime, probably. So it's been a long time. The system impact, again, you never want to draft for need, at least not this high in particular. Every team needs 2 catchers. Challenging position to develop. I don't think this makes this and Tinney. I don't think this makes it any more likely that Jeffers or anyone else in the org is traded. I think there's a high chance that Ryan Jeffers gets traded, even if the Twins don't draft a single catcher on day 1. We'll put it that way. Maybe it reduces the chances that the Twins would be trying to sign Ryan Jeffers to like a super long-term contract, but I don't think there's much of a chance that the Twins would be interested in signing Ryan Jeffers to like a super long-term contract, because Vahn Lackey, this is a very highly regarded college guy, so those guys move through systems pretty quick. Maybe he could debut next season, but I think you wouldn't be making plans for that. You wouldn't be like, oh, Ryan Jeffers, we can trade him because Vahn Lackey is going to be our starter next year at some point. Maybe that could happen, but I would think the season after that would be much more likely and where you would want to kind of plot things out. But yeah, and even beyond Jeffers, again, I think, Eduardo Tait, Kadeem Jow, Enrique Jimenez, these guys can all coexist. Obviously, they can't all be at the same levels. So some of these guys are going to need to start moving up, but there's nothing that's going to really block anybody. So Vahn Lackey, very excited about him. I don't want to give too much into prospect list point because I'm not there yet. I don't re-rank my prospect rankings right away after the draft. I like to really get comfortable with these guys, but we've known Vahn Lackey was going to be here for a while. I'm going to have him above Kalen Culpepper. I can tell you that much for sure. And it is not a guarantee that I'm going to have Walker Jenkins as the number 1 prospect when I put out my next list. Vahn Lackey is definitely in the conversation to overtake Walker Jenkins as the Twins' top prospect, in my opinion. This guy is special. So pretty cool the Twins grabbed him. And then in the second round, again, this is going to be the surprise of the entire Twins draft, that they took Carson Tinney, catcher from Texas, 43rd overall. I can't imagine, maybe it's happened, but I can't imagine that there have been many times, at least, if any, that a team has taken a catcher with their first 2 picks back-to-back. So that was kind of the first knee-jerk reaction, is they took another catcher right after taking Vahn Lackey. But this dude is all about power, and I think that almost overshadows the rest of his tools. The power is elite, among the best in the class. Massive exit velocities, was a very productive hitter in college. Again, I think him and Lackey can coexist just fine. Maybe they'll have them at different levels, just so one can catch more, or maybe they want to keep these guys pretty fresh, especially, starting their first year or starting out the first few months of next year. But Tinney, he's not just a bat. Again, I said maybe the power is overshadowing a lot of his other skills. This is a big fella. I think he's 6'4", but there is optimism that he can stick behind the plate. He is also a catchery catcher. It's not a lock. It's very hard to find anybody who's a lock to stick behind the plate, but the one big difference is Carson Tinney does not have the athleticism to play anywhere else in the field beyond first base. So that's kind of, beyond, once I got used to the, back-to-back catchers, let that sink in. One of my arguments is, let's say the Twins took Flora at number 3 overall, the top pitcher in the class, and then they came back and took Tinney. We would probably be super hyped about this pick of Carson Tinney. I think I said again, wasn't the pick I was really feeling, but it has less to do with Carson Tinney and more to do with how this shapes the entire draft class. I think we would all be head over heels with this guy had Lackey not been the top choice. But again, this is a big dude, huge exit velocities, also has a very good arm, is well regarded as a blocker. I think a lot of that just has to do with him being a bigger bodied guy. It's hard to get a ball past him. Obviously his footwork and things like that, you need to be there for blocking balls in the dirt still. You have to be agile, but big dude. His hit tool, that's a big question. And he hit well at Texas. It's not like he struck out a ton, drew a ton of walks, didn't strike out a ton, but struck out a little bit more than I'd like to see from a college hitter getting drafted this high, to be honest. And then his defense, I think that's pretty normal for a catcher, though. I don't think it's any more than any other catcher that would be picked in this round. And the Twin he reminds me of and has been frequently compared to is Ryan Jeffers, another big guy taken in the second round. But I've seen Hunter Goodman among the mentions as well. Kind of feels like if Billy Amick could catch, which, Billy Amick leading the system in home runs, but hasn't really put together a complete package that you might like to see from a corner infielder, likely either a subpar third baseman or maybe he could be a good first baseman. That profile in Billy Amick isn't that exciting. It's a prospect. I don't want to completely kick dirt on Billy Amick, but it's not like he's going to be like a tippy-top prospect with that profile. But if you were to imagine him as a catcher, that completely changes, and like a solid defensive catcher. You go from, maybe Billy Amick will spend some years in the majors as a first base DH guy, kind of a bat off the bench type, to, he's going to have a big league career, and he's probably going to have as many years in the big leagues. And that's maybe how I would look at Carson Tinney, is that he's a uniquely high upside offense catcher. So I totally get why they would have been into him. But again, it's just sort of the whiplash of seeing them take another catcher is hard to get over. Comp B, 74th overall. This is a competitive balance round after the second round. They took Brent Renfrow, a right-handed pitcher out of Virginia Tech. The big takeaway for me is this guy's been a sturdy, healthy, durable, innings-eating starting pitcher, which the Twins haven't found many of those guys, but that's just hard to find at any level. Now, college, minors, majors, it's really hard to find guys that can go even just 3 college seasons in a row healthy and out there logging innings. 15 games started and at least 70 innings pitched in all 3 of his college seasons. Mid-90s fastball with good spin on his breaking pitches too. So it's not like Brett Renfrow is only this kind of boring innings eater guy, but he has a 4-pitch mix. I think he's been as high as 97 I saw. So this is like a really good, like, hey, let's set the floor of our pitching class. And I do think the Twins really, really need a lot of pitching depth in this draft. I don't love taking pitching early because there's so much pitching. And we're gonna see this. We're seeing this with Renfrow. We're gonna see this with the next guy I want to talk about. There's a lot of good pitching left past, the 70th overall pick. We'll just put it there. There's not nearly as much hitting left at that point. I think once you get outside into this realm, you're going to get a better return on investment on your pitching than your hitting typically. And I like Brett Renfrow as the guy they went out and got. A sturdy innings eater again. Rounding out his arsenal is going to be kind of a big check mark. So he's got the foundation of a 4-pitch mix. It's just, how do we get that to all complement each other? His fastball he's kind of like a primary fastball guy where he gets his swings and misses off his other pitches. The last time the Twins drafted a college pitcher in this range who threw a lot, like Renfrow has, is Griffin Jax. And Griffin Jax, I wonder now, now that he's starting in with Tampa Bay, and that's going pretty well, I wonder if Griffin Jax, if that nightmare year that the Twins just had to call Griffin Jax up and put him in the rotation, I wonder if that never happened, because after that point, he was kind of viewed as a failed starter. And I wonder, what if that didn't happen and Griffin Jax made those strides that he made over that offseason when he was getting converted to the bullpen? It wasn't just that Griffin Jax in the bullpen was able to max out his throws. That was definitely part of the process of him becoming a good reliever, was that he didn't have to leave anything in the tank. He could throw one inning. But I do think some of his pitches also just took a step forward in that offseason. And I wonder if he would have remained a starting pitcher with the Twins, what that would have looked like. And again, I think Tampa Bay is showing that there was a starting pitcher in there. So, some people might hear Griffin Jax and have some mixed emotions, but I think, guys like this, and Renfrow throws much harder than Jax did as a starter, but guys like this who've thrown a lot, they have a huge backlog of data in their brains that they can go access and understand and get how to attack hitters better, understand what their pitches do better, understand what their deficiencies are better, and be able to, with that understanding and of knowing themselves more, adapt to maybe a role change like Jax has, and then a role change again like Jax has, and maybe outperform some degrees of what is expected of them. So I do think that is, I'm not saying I would always draft a guy with this kind of a track record over a stuff guy. Connor Prelip's worked out pretty well for the Twins. Riley Quick is looking like he's going to work out pretty well for the Twins. But I do like to see them grab a guy in this mold because, again, they haven't taken a lot of these guys. This system is lacking of pitching. This system is lacking in just like a bulk of innings, too. And Renfrow feels like he can slot in and be a nice piece in that regard. Third round, 79th overall, they drafted Ethan Wachsman, a high schooler out of Colorado. Wachsman, it's a W-A-C-H, okay? It's not W-A-L-K. So we're going to get that joke. He's going to have to deal with that one, Wachsman, over his whole pitching career. But this is a big, physically mature 18-year-old kid. 6'5", 210 as an 18-year-old, a recently turned 18-year-old. That is like a dream starting pitching horse build. He's committed to play at Wake Forest, so I'm guessing he drafted in the third round. He's not going to get paid like a third rounder. I'm guessing his bonus is going to be pretty high over slot. I'm not sure. It's not really easy to forecast out where the Twins are going to kind of find that money in their bonus pool to make it work, which probably we're going to see some of that happening on day 2 here. But He had 100 miles per hour at the draft combine, though his delivery is very effortful. He's going to have to make there's so much work. He's got a lot of work to do. Super raw guy. Basically, everything is a work in progress other than his velo. His delivery needs to get cleaned up. His secondaries need to be better. But I'm throwing out a recent draftee that he reminds me of the Twins is Charlie Soto, because there is such a foundation there. It's a big-bodied young guy who throws hard and has shown some feel for pitching, but really needs help with putting it all together. It's not like he's not shown any. I think I saw the Twins really complimented his changeup and said that looks like it's a foundational pitch to be, obviously needs work. So, once you have that, that's a good starting point, and we'll work from there. But yeah, I love this pick. This does not feel like a guy that you can find in the third round in most years. And yeah, Charlie Soto, again, you have a knee-jerk reaction hearing that, and he's missed so much time. That is a big question with these high school kids. Even a big-bodied guy like Charlie Soto, you would think, oh, that guy's going to be an innings eater through the minors, and he's just been hurt for 2 years now, basically. So you never know what you're going to get. No matter how big a kid is. But Charlie Soto is still, I think, a really good prospect and an exciting guy to have drafted, an exciting guy to have in the system. Was a supplemental first-round pick, or a Comp A first round, whatever. I hate all the terminology of the weird sandwich rounds of the draft. But point being, Charlie Soto was drafted quite a bit higher than Wachsman. And I wouldn't throw, Dason Hill's another guy that's going to come to mind in the Twins system, but Wachsman is so much more filled out than Dason Hill is even now, a couple years later. But he's on that level to me of excitement, of potential, and I love this pick, and he's so much fun. I think again, talking about how a class comes together, I think having a Renfrow kind of allows you to then take a Wachsman and maybe take a bigger risk. And then in the fourth round, they got another college pitcher in Tommy LaPour. Again, LaPour and Wachsman. These guys they're gonna hear some bad jokes about their names over their careers if they struggle. This is another big dude, 6'4", 230. He's got a background with, I think, football and I know wrestling for sure. That's something that's just caught my attention a lot since Louis Varland and Luke Heschel, is these guys who have wrestled before just seem to have a crazy different element of competitiveness to them than you see out of a typical baseball player. I wonder if the Twins are kind of keyed in on that as well. I'm not sure, but big, broad dude. But again, this is a big guy who's hurt too. He missed nearly all of 2026, but he threw 90 innings in college the year before. That is a ton of innings to throw in a college season. He's flirted with triple digits, but the horizontal movement on his changeup is kind of the unique unicorn element of Tommy LaPour, despite that big velocity. Yeah, but he does throw a sweeper, too, that works with that as well. And, again, flirts with 100. So this is an interesting guy. My big question with him is, can he stick in the rotation? He does feel more like a reliever profile, and I think he could be really fun in the bullpen. But, we'll see. Obviously, your starting pitchers are more valued and valuable than relievers. That's kind of hard to convey to a 2026, in the middle of this 2026 Twin season, that, relievers, you can find relievers. Well, maybe that's easier said than done. But yeah, he feels like the next in the line of this process of the Twins just going for these big-bodied relief risk starting pitchers. He's not quite on the level of Riley Quick, but Riley Quick is a big dude. James Ellwinger's a big guy. Jason Wright's, in a different way since he's like 6'11", but he's about as slim as Dason Hill is, but he's a big guy. Matt Barr, a big guy they drafted last year. So they are targeting these big fellas, and Tommy LaPour is yet another one. Again, I don't know if I can say necessarily as a pitcher, his repertoire reminds me of those guys, but that's who he brings to mind, is these big dudes that the Twins are drafting for on the mound. So, again, day 2 is today. I think a lot of people kind of tune out day 2 because they think it's not as exciting of guys. But the Twins have I think they have 3 more picks in the top 200. And these are some current Twins who were drafted in the 5th round or later. Joe Ryan, Taj Bradley, Zebby Matthews, Taylor Rogers, Bailey Ober, Cole Sands, David Festa. Among hitters, Ben Ross and Kyler Fedko were drafted on what would be day 2 now. All-star, that's mostly pitchers. I do think you're more likely to find major league pitchers in day 2 in these rounds than hitters. But if we look at the all-star rosters, Max Muncy was a 5th rounder, Tristan Peters was a 7th rounder, and Ben Rice, the Yankees slugger, was a 12th rounder. So obviously less talent in these rounds, not going to kind of shy away from that. But there's going to be big leaguers and probably all-stars taken in this day 2. So again, I'll be back with that. There's going to be a ton of more content at Limestone Pipeline from myself and Jamie Cameron around the draft. We're going to be re-ranking our prospects, top 20, so that's going to be a lot of fun. Jamie did a 6.5-hour live stream of day 1 of the draft yesterday with Jeremy and some other guests on the destination, the show. Check that out on YouTube. The replay is just as fun. Maybe you don't want to watch the entire 6.5 hours, but you can jump ahead to the Twins picks and see their analysis as well. So check that out. Thanks for checking this one out. I appreciate you. Again, a day 2 video of some sort will be coming soon. I'll also get back. I haven't talked about the Twins system recap stuff for about a week, so I will get to that over the All-Star break. So be looking for that as well. Thanks for watching this one.